Hi, and welcome back to LearnVisualFoxPro.com. In this video, we'll be looking at, actually this is part 2 of building an application from scratch, putting it all together, all that we've learned thus far. And in this video, I want to focus on creating the staff management screen, that is the staff/user screen. And so what we're going to do is just jump right in. So first off, I want to make sure that I'm in the right folder. Set default to. And if you remember that I have several folders here that I will need to have access to, so I'll set path to data, form, PRG, reports, let's see, data reports, forms, PRGs, menus, data, PRGs, reports, menus. What I'm going to do is to just put all of this in a little application, so the next time I need it, I don't have to type it, I'll just run it. Modicum. What is the name for a project? It's issue track. So what I'll do next time is just come here and so what I would do is next time just run the setup program and actually let's execute this now, and that should take care of everything. Okay, so here's our code from the last session, and we're not creating any forms. Okay, there's one thing that I wanted to address from the last lesson. Let's modify this, and it's where we call on shutdown. Now this command, if you did follow along and probably try this in your code, if you did not reset the on shutdown event, then you would not be able to exit Visual FoxPro when you're finished developing. So what we need to do is here is just to put on shutdown and leave it blank to reset it so that Visual FoxPro will exit once we're finished doing our development. Okay, so let's go ahead and create, let's verify I didn't create any forms last week. Okay. We'll be creating 2 forms in this video. The first one will display a list of the users of the system, and then when we double click on any users from that list, it will pop up a edit screen that will allow us to set their passwords and their security level. So let's go ahead and create a list screen. So what we want to do here is to set the data environment for this to be private. I almost never work with the default data session, though there are times for it, but I've found workarounds, and you'll see that here. Okay, so what we want is a simple list control, so we'll drop a list box here. And I'll put a label here just saying double click on auto size to change that to true, and I'll set the back style to transparent. Okay, and list 1, I'll leave it as list 1, and I need a couple buttons here, so I need 1. In fact, I need several buttons, so let's lock the builder. So we lock this when the button locks. When I click on command, it will allow me to use it several times without having to click on it again. So new, edit, delete, and exit. Okay, and then we click here to release the lock. And we go format, align, left. Okay. What we can do is make this our cancel button. So whenever the user presses the escape key on this form, we can have the click event of this button called by default. So we can do that by setting from the other tab, click on the cancel option, and double click and set that to true. Okay. And all right. Okay, so let's find our table. We want to actually just right mouse click on this, go data environment. We want to add the staff table. Hit close. And let's see what are the properties here. So what we're going to do is bind the list box to the username. We could use a username or full name. Let's go with the full name. Okay, so we'll close the data environment, and I'll go here and simply go data, control source, drop down, and select full name. Okay, and so what we want to do, I'm going to create on this form a method form, and I go new method. So this is simply a procedure that I'm adding to the form itself, a custom procedure or function. In object-oriented terms, it's called a method. Okay, so we'll call this edit staff. We'll have one to do the deleting of the staff, delete, or just del staff. And I'll put one here called new staff. Close. So those are custom procedures that I've added, and if I go to the methods tab, scroll down to the bottom, I will see those that I've added, and by default they're in lowercase. Okay, so we're going to add some code to that in a bit, and you'll see the reason for doing this is that when I double click on the list box, I want the same behavior as when I click on the edit button. So instead of duplicating code, I centralize the code in a method that belongs to the form and let the form handle that, and just simply call the same routine from here. So if I double click on this, I'll get the add items event, which is not what I want. So let's go to double click, and I simply say this form is an object reference that refers to the form, which is this form here. Okay, so as I said, we do encounter a bit of object-oriented programming once you're working in Visual FoxPro, and then later on we'll look deeper into objects and working fully object-oriented most of the way, instead of just in the form. So we want to call the method this form, and we want to call the by default, when you double click on the name, we want to do the edit staff routine. So we'll close that, and then for new, we want to say this form new staff. So I never have to come back to here. Once I set these guys, and see I can even set it without even writing, knowing what the code for edit and new is. And of course, I didn't have one for exit, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm just going to put the code in here. I can do it this way, this form dot release, and call the release method on the form, or I could also do it this way, release this form. In fact, I prefer this method over this one, so let's close that. And so our form is almost ready. Let's change the caption on the form. Click here. Captions in the layout. And okay, I want to show you a neat little thing introduced in Visual FoxPro 9, and we're going to set this form up so that it can resize nicely without any problems. So we're going to use the anchor property, which they borrowed from Visual Studio, and I don't mind at all. I love it. So let's move this up a little bit. And so what we're going to do is have this stretch to the right and down when the form is resized. So we click on the anchor property, and we click on the ellipsis to bring up the editor, and we want to anchor this to the top, to the left, to the bottom, actually all around. And click OK, and the number for that is 15. Now for the buttons, we want the buttons to float. So they should float relative to the right side of the form. So I'm going to select all of these at once and click on anchor, go back here, and just select anchor to the top and the bottom, so it floats to the right. Okay, and so save. Didn't give it a name yet. So we call this staff list. And if I run this, let's see what happens here. Okay, so we currently have no staff members, and so what we need to do is to dynamically disable edit and delete, because we can't edit, there's nothing in there. But let me just demonstrate for you the changes that we just did in terms of the anchoring. So if I click here and drag down, you notice that the list box is sized appropriately as I move up, and likewise as I drag to the right, the buttons move over. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so let's exit. And so we want to set some code in the form refresh. Now when a form is instantiated, that is created, there are a few events that fire off, and I think I did mention this in a previous lesson. So first we have the form load event that fires, and so any code in here will run. Then it goes to the init, and any code in here will run. And then it goes to, after init, then there is the refresh. Okay, so the refresh method is called after init. And so I want to put some code in here to check to see if the record count for our table is 0, then we need to disable the edit and delete buttons accordingly. Okay, so we'll select staff, select our table, we'll note the current position of the record pointer, and I use a function called recno that returns the record number of the record pointer, of the current of the table, that is. So the current record on which the table sits, or the record pointer sits, recno will return that number. So if rec number I wanted to say if EOF, if we're at the end of file, which means the file is empty, return a -1. Otherwise, give me the current record number that the record pointer is sitting on. So this function is the immediate if. And if you're a programmer, then in VB, it'll be no stranger to you. Right. That's right. And so essentially, what it says: immediately if check evaluate the first expression, and in C++ it would be considered like similar to the ternary operator. So evaluate this. If it's true, return the first value. Return this value, the one just to the right. If it's false, return this value. The equivalent would be if EOF, then npos equal -1, else npos equal rec no, and if. So in one line, I replace all of this up here. I'm just going to put this in comments. Okay, so what we've done, so we've noted the current record position, and then what I want to do is a count. So I just simply say count. And what I'm going to do, just to make this, I'm just going to count the next one record. Because if I have at least one record, then I'm good. If I have no records, then I need to take some action. So let's move this out of the way. Put it here, and there's a variable that's updated when we use the count command and some other commands as well. It's called a tally system variable. So I say if tally greater than 0, then so let's see now. Tally is a system variable that is updated automatically by Visual FoxPro when certain commands are executed. Okay, so if tally, and I don't need a then, so let's say if tally is greater than 0, okay, we have at least one record in the table. So enable buttons. So we want to say then with this button btn edit dot enabled is equal to true, btn delete enabled equal true, and with okay, and then else, of course we want to do the same, the reverse. Now there's an easier way to do this. So if I said else, let's put this here. So I'm showing you some optimization. So this would be false, and this would be false. So I'm going to run this for now. Let's see. Okay, so what we want to do down here is to reposition the record pointer. If npos greater than 0, go to npos. Okay, so let's close this. I'm going to come back to that code in a second. Let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so now we get the appropriate behavior. And again, refresh is automatically called once the form is instantiated. It's load init, then refresh. And so the code got executed where we did a count. We had 0 records, and so this was automatically disabled. So we can't edit and delete what we don't have. Okay, so let's exit, and let's revisit that code. We could reduce this to single line. Let's change this up a little bit. And take this, highlight and press Shift Tab, bring that back, and we could just say enabled, and in bracket we evaluate tally greater than 0. We can put that there, greater than 0. So if this expression is true, then it will be enabled. If it's false, it will be disabled automatically. So we don't need to. We can take all of that out, and let's see if it works. Execute, and we get the same behavior. Okay, so that's fine. So that's the first screen. Also, one of the things we want to do in here is to requery the list. But I'm gonna hold off on this. I want you to see the problem first, and then the solution later. So that's the first form. We'll save that and exit. And so we need to create another form, and then this one will be the details, so to speak. So this will actually be the customer information. The staff information. So we'll change the caption on this. And let's drop a few labels. So we want username, full name, password, verified password, and we want security level. And then here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this we want to drop down. And we also need about 2 buttons on this form. 1, 2. Okay. So I select all of these. I want to change a few properties here. Back style is transparent. Auto size is true. So this will be username. Full name, password. Okay, so let's see. Let me make all of these the same size. I'm bring it to about here, and select all, and size all. Okay. So both these are password text boxes, so we'll set the password character to an asterisk. key password car, type star in there. So what will happen is that as we type, the actual password will not be displayed. Asterisk will be displayed instead. Okay. Okay, as for the combo, what we're going to do is to just manually enter the values in there that we want. Security level. Let's see, what can we choose for the security level? Where is it to go to? Okay, so to set the source, the data source for the combo box, can be several things, and it all depends on the row source type. Let's examine this a little bit. And so we can have value, which is where we key in the values manually and set them right in the control at design time. We can use alias, which will pick the values from a specified column within a table. We could use a SQL statement or a query, saved query, which is similar to a SQL. We could use an array, which is what I tend to use most of the time, or fields, again from a table, or files, which it will actually prompt you for files with the file open dialog. Haven't used that much. The structure of a table, another pop-up, and this is a new one, a collection, and this is nice. Okay, so for today we're going to be using the value type, and we'll just type the values for this combo. So we'll say you're an administrator, and comma. So we just separate the items by comma, or you are just a user. So 2 levels. Okay, so we'll give this a name, CBO security, and save. Okay, so let's add some decoration to this. So we're using the 3D shape control. Let's drop one here and drop another one here. Resize this. Okay, so this we want to do send to back. So we go format and say send to back. Basically, we're changing the Z order, and we'll do the same for this one and send to back. Okay. And then what we want to do next is to change these to be 3D. So the special effect is plain right now. 3D looks a lot nicer. 3D here. So these are not containers. They're just controls that we place here just to give, a nice look to the interface. Okay, so we have, let's see. Okay, so we save. Let's see if we run this, and that looks fine. Cancel doesn't work, so we haven't put anything here. Password 1 2 3 4, and that shows 1 2 3 4 as you expected. And then the drop down, of course. Okay, so the problem with this is that you can delete the item that is selected. It's not deleted from the list, but it's deleted from here. So what we want to do is change the combo, instead of being a drop down, to be a drop list box. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops. Okay. Close here. Okay. So let's put some code behind this guy. This form release, and this one will change the style of the box. We go down to style, double click, change it to a drop down list. And in fact, what we want to do is we can set the default value for this to, let's see, data. There are a number of ways to do this. We could actually type user here. So if I were to run this, and that did not work. Okay. Okay, I'll show you another way to set that. Hang on a second. Okay, that should work, but I'll sort it out later. Okay, so what do we want to do? So how we want this to work is this form will be called from the from this one, from the staff list. So when let's open this guy. So when you double click or click on the edit button, we want to call this form, and so we need to somehow get the record information over to this form so it can be edited. Now what I do to let's make these the same size. Okay. What I do to accomplish that, I go form data, and again I work with a private data session. In fact, here is a good place to use a default data session. So what we would do, or what we could do, is to open up the staff list, and the staff list would have its data session already selected, which would be a private one. And then when we open this form from the staff list, if we have this as default, it would share the current private data session of the staff info. But I've had issues with that in the past, and so I'm just going to bypass that and use a private list. So what we're going to do is to go to data environment, and we're going to open the table ourselves. So each form will actually have a different copy of the table. And when I say different, I mean it's not duplicated. It means that each form will just open its own copy. It's the same table that's stored on the hard drive, but this form will have one version open, and this form will have another version open. So that's sort of like multi-user. And so what we will do, I'm going to show you how we pass an argument or arguments to a form from another form. And so what we'll do is simply pass the record number from the staff list over to this form, and given that it's the same table, we'll just go to that, navigate to that record number, and everything should be a breeze. So let's wire these up. Control source, and that should be username, and this one should be full name. I just noticed that we don't have a password field in the staff table. Okay, that can be easily fixed. And this one, what do we have here? Security level. Okay. Okay, so we save. Let's go back to data and staff, modify, and security level we've made an integer. I'm going to change this for now because we're using value binding, and I don't want to get into arrays yet. I want to save that for later. So we're just going to make this a character type for simplicity's sake. And so it's administrator and user. I'm going to change that to admin and user. So admin is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So make that 5. And we also need a password. I'll leave it at 10 for now. So password 10 characters. Okay. I will not be doing any encryption on the password, so we can look at that again in another lesson where we can develop some kind of an encryption routine. Okay, so having done that, let's go back here. So that's okay, security level, and we want to change the record source from administrator to admin. In fact, I'm just going to put this the other way around. Make user the first one, and then admin the second one. And password. Okay, so we wouldn't set the password here because I don't want the users typing directly into the table, into the field. So we're going to leave this, and at the end I will wire this up. In fact, actually, we could wire it up. Let's do this. My brain is running ahead of myself. Okay, so we'll leave that wired up. This one, of course, would not be wired up because this is just a verification of this one. So what we're going to do by default, we're going to make this disabled, because during normal edit mode, we don't need to verify the user's password. Only if a change is made to the password, then we want to verify it. So what we could do is in this event, if we go here, there's an event that says interactive change, means the user's keying into the field. Whenever you type in here, we want to open this up for verification. So I'll double click, and what we'll do is to say this form txt pass to enabled equal true. Okay, let's save again, and now I want to add some methods to this form. I'm going to have one called save data, or just save. Let's call it save. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, so let's go to and wire this up to. Let's go to the init, and in here we want to put L parameter. So we want to accept an argument that will be passed to this form, and it's going to be numerics and rec number. And what we can do, if tn rec number is equal to -1, then add new record. So we can know if we want to add a new record to the staff table, we simply pass -1 into the form, and it should add a new record. Otherwise, it should just go to the record specified. So we can do if tn append blank, else go to tn rec number. Okay. Now in this form, we want to do a bit of table buffering. So when if the user were to cancel, we want to make sure that all changes are reverted. So let's go and turn buffering on in the load event. So we go here, and we want to do some setup here as well. We want to set talk off, set exclusive off. For each form, you need to to set up the environment, because especially if you're using private data session. So I'm going to go back to all our forms and do that. And you'll see that if we were using objects, we could actually create what is called a base form that would have all this already coded and simply inherit from it, and then we would just inherit this behavior and not have to key it all the time. What else do we want to do here? Set talk off, set exclusive off, and set deleted on to hide deleted records, and that should be good. And then we want to turn table buffering on. I was reading an article from Visual FoxPro Advisor magazine, or it's now MSDN Advisor magazine, and it was talking about the difference between row buffering and table buffering, and they didn't advise, at least the author didn't advise us to use the record buffering, because there are issues in there, and I'll get into that probably sometime down the road when we start looking at some tips and tricks. So I'm going to take the advice. I did happen to agree with the article, so I'll be using table buffering from now on instead of row buffering. Okay, so to turn table buffering on, it's cursor set property bracket, and we just want a buffering, and we want our table, which is staff. Oh, sorry. Is it 4 and staff? Okay, I didn't get any Intellisense on that, and so what I normally do when Intellisense fails me, I go to the help just to verify help, and I type cursor set prop. And I scroll down here, buffering, and forward says set pessimistic table buffering on, and we're going to go with the optimistic one for today, so that's 3. Okay, so my memory was not too bad. Okay, so that's so what we want to do is to so this is the form load. What we want to do in the form onload, we want to, where is that? Onload gets called, I believe it's the last event that fires when a form is closed. And so in here, I want to do a table revert, and I'll just put 0 for the current row and put staff here. So undo any changes not already committed. You may be wondering why I would put it in the staff unload, because this gets called every time the form is closed. Now, it's possible that there are 2 ways the user can close this form. They can click on my cancel button here. So I could put the table revert code in here, but also they may choose to click on the X here and close the form, which is not trapped. So the only way I can code against the user clicking the X to close the form is to put code in the unload form event. And this simply says a table revert works like this. If you've already done a table update and the data is committed to the table, then table revert will have nothing to revert. If the table is in a state of flux, so to speak, then table revert will undo your changes. So this is ignored if the data is already committed, which we would have done if we click on OK. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is to wire up the save routine, and we're going to do a bit of error checking in here. So the first thing we want to do is to validate that pass 1 and pass 2 matches. Okay, so if this, And you'll notice that there are times when I use this, and there are other times when I use this form. It all depends on where I'm working from. Right now, the save method belongs to the form, so this refers to the form. Let me just get out of this for a little bit. Ignore. When I'm in a button, such as a cancel button, I have to use this form because I'm in the button click event. And this would refer to, if I were to type this, it would refer to the button itself. Okay, so if I want to get the form, depending on where I am, I use this form or this. This, of course, refers to the button itself because I'm in the button click event. Okay, so you just want to keep a mental note of that. Okay, so if this txt pass one dot text no value not equal to this txt pass 2 value, and we know something is wrong. And what we'll do, no, we won't trim anything. We'll leave it as is. We're going to put a message box there. We'll say message box passwords don't match. Please try again. Okay, and we'll put, we're getting some Intellisense here. 16 is stop. Well, stop is a bit abrupt. We don't want to do that. We want to put like 48, just a little warning, and plus 0 or nothing for the OK button. So I'll just put plus 0 here for completeness, and we'll put the title of this box is password mismatch. Close. And okay, so the next thing we want to do is to return. I want to set the focus to, so this txt pass 1, set focus, and we want to return. So if the passwords don't match, return to the first password and allow the user to keep typing. Otherwise, we can say if table update and record, current record, and let's see. Okay, so we'll go false, and we'll go staff. So this says 0 is the current record, false says don't force a save. And of course, staff refers to the table. So table update returns true or false if the record was committed or not. So if we try to save and there was an error, it will return false. If it is okay, then of course it will return true. So in this case, what we want to do then, I'm going to manually, in fact, I don't have to manually update anything. So this is good. We exit the form, and why this we say this dot release. Otherwise, I'm going to do a bit of error trapping here. So we're going to call a function called error, and what it will do is create error array. These are tongue twisters. So if table update returns false, obviously something went wrong, and so to get the details of what went wrong, Visual FoxPro, if I call the error function, it will create an array and put the details of what went wrong into the name I specified. So it will basically create an array with this name, and then I can look at the values of this array and give the user some quality information. So let's look at the array function. Again, I don't make it a habit of memorizing these because the help is very good. So let's go error. Okay, so we double click. Okay, so it creates an array with 7 columns containing information about the error. So let's see. Error 1, numeric, the number of the error. Okay, so we know what the error number is. And 2, character. is a character type. So this is basically telling us the for every element in the array, every column in the array. So the first one is a numeric type, the second one is a character type, and it said the message, the text of the error message. Okay, so so what we're going to do is make this pretty simple. I'm just going to return the text of the error message, and we can modify this as we go down. So what I will do is say C message is equal to E, and we get the second element. Notice that it uses the C style square brackets for array. In fact, I could use VB style parentheses as well. Okay. I'll go message box. I'll display the message 48, and I want the caption of this form to be the caption of the message box, and this. So notice I don't release the form here. Only if the update was successful then I close the form. Otherwise, we remain on the form. So I think we are good here. So let's go now, close this out, and go back to where is that? Staff list form. And in the new and edit, we want to wire these guys up. So these are already wired up. So all we need to do is go down to these special methods that we created to wire them up. So let's start with new. And so we'll go do form staff info with, and I'll just simply pass the record number of the active table, and I want to say no show, so don't show the form, and I want to give it a name. I'm going to create a reference to the form in memory, so let's say O form staff, and I'm going to put linked. Okay, so what does all this mean? Traditionally, to run a form, you simply say do form. So this you should be familiar with, and this will run the form. With is used to pass an argument to a procedure or function in Visual FoxPro. So I want to pass an argument to the staff form. So I say with, and the value I want to pass is the record number of the table that I'm on right now, which is also the staff table. So we're using two instances of the table, if you recall. The no-show clause says don't show the form. So you run the form, but don't show it. However, when the form is created in memory, that reference that you have in memory, assign it to this variable for me, so that I can make reference to the form when I'm ready. And then the linked says when this variable goes out of scope, close the form automatically. Okay, so you always probably want to work with the link so we don't have stuff floating around in memory and incur memory leaking or leakage. Okay, so another way to do that would be make this a local O form staff as form, and so what this allows me to do now is to refer to the form as an object. I can say O form staff, and I can call the show method on it, show, and I'll put one here, which is show modal. One equal show modal. So when I show the form in modal or modal mode, it means I must exit from the form before I'm allowed to do anything else within the application. Okay, and then when the user exits, well, the form will actually go out of scope. So this is fine. In fact, I want the same behavior for, actually this is correct, for a new form. we would need to pass in -1. If you remember, we coded the TN rec number. So -1 says new record. And then in the edit staff, we want to pass the record number. Of course, form staff show 1. Now you want to do, I'm able to get Intellisense on this variable because I did this. I did the local form as local form staff as form. Without this, I would not get any Intellisense at all, and I'd be left to remember it on my own. So let's try that. And if I go form staff, I get no Intellisense. Okay. So you want to, when you have your variables, get some Intellisense out of Visual FoxPro, just strongly type it by using the as clause and specifying the type. Okay, so that should work. And then finally we want to delete, which is here. Okay, so I'm going to define, use some define here, define see message as do you want So I'm using string concatenation to show the name of the currently selected staff member for display in the prompt. So do you want to delete staff member? And in bracket we'll show their name, and then we put a question sign there. And define ID yes to be for, and define I'm just doing this so you could see some additional features of Visual FoxPro that we've not really looked at as yet. So what I'll do here is simply ask the user if Messagebox see message, and I'll put ID yes. It's actually yes no, and you can see it up here. For an ID of yes, 4 will give me yes no buttons, and 48 of course gives me the exclamation point. But I don't think I want exclamation. I think I want the question sign. Actual question is 32, so I'm going to change this to question 32 and ID yes, and it actually should be button yes no. Okay, so MB yes no plus question. We can make this MB question as well. Question MB here. MB message box, short for message box, and of course we want the caption to be the caption of the form itself. So if this returns, and Messagebox returns results, so the yes no box will return 6. So let's define that. Define ID yes equals 6. And we can define, though we don't need to check for 1. ID no is equal to 7. So if Messagebox is equal to ID yes. Then we want to delete the record. We want to skip. And then we want to refresh the form. This, refresh. And if. Okay, so let's see. Okay, a few things I want to change here. I want to change this caption to delete staff. And if we skip, I need to always check to see if we were on the last record and we deleted it, then we need to ensure that we don't go past the end of file marker. So if EOF, if end of file, then go bottom, and if, and then we refresh, and that looks a lot better. Okay. Okay, so let's try and run this one. Okay, we're getting an error because the table is in use here, and I do have the table open exclusively here. So let me close that, and close here, close this out, so we get some more room, and we can run the staff list form. So running staff list, I have, let's close this guy down. And so if I go new, I get an error. Staff info SCX not found. Let's cancel that. Let's see, did I name the form wrong? Exit. And let's bring up our project. It's staff info. And so, okay, so that looks fine. Let's go back to, I have staff info, so that's fine. Okay, what is my path set to? Do I have forms in there? Okay, print set path. So I have form, and it should be forms with an S. Okay, so that is why I'm getting the error. And so we can easily fix that. Modicum setup. And we've got an S there. I'll just copy this out for now. Save this. And that fixes that. So let's try that again. And so we click on new. And it says table or row buffering requires a set multi-lock on. And that is absolutely true. So let's cancel and fix that. So modify. And so in the load event, so we set multi-lock on. So that's a requirement for row buffering. I did mention that in the first lesson on forms, or somewhere, first or second lesson, so that's fine. So we'll go ahead and close this down again. And one of the things we can do, notice that my form starts over here in the left-hand corner. I tend to like my form centered, so let's fix that quickly. Two ways to do that. I could say auto center. Whoops, wrong. Reset. Auto center true. And for the next guy, I could also set it within my init code. Sometimes I like to get hands-on. I can say this dot auto center equal true. So we can do that, and these guys I've not anchored anchored any of them for resizing. So what I'm going to do for this border is to prevent the user from resizing. So sizable, we're just going to make it a fixed dialog, and therefore the user will not be able to resize this. And I also want to remove the minimize and the maximize button from this form. So we go down to max button is false, min button is false. So we can only X out, and that's fine. Close. Okay, minimize, close. And so we have no staff members. Let's create one, and here our form comes up, and it knows that we're in new mode and something is wrong. So in new mode, actually it doesn't matter. This will automatically becomes enabled once I start typing the password. So let's create a user. One, two, three, four, the password. And notice why that verify becomes active right away. And I did not set a default here for security level. Let's cancel out of that. And function argument type. We got an error here. Let's see where the error is. So it says table revert. Okay, and so we'll ignore the error. Just so we can. Okay, so it says file is not open. Okay, so that is happening before. Okay, a few things we want to fix. So let's go here. If we're adding a new record, we want to set default security to user. So we say this dot cbo security list index equal 1, because we know there are two options. There are two list items. So the list index allows us to refer or reference the items within the list box by a number. 1 being the first item, 2 being the second item. Okay, so that's fine. Also, we've got an error here in the form unload. So form unload, as I said, is the last event that fires, but also I forgot that there is for the data environment, there's an auto close. Where is that? So there's an open tables and there's a close table. So these fire before my form closes. So I was getting an error. I think the error was two-part. The file was already closed by the time I am issuing a table revert. So this is kind of late. I can't put this here. I got to take this out, and I'm going to put it somewhere else. I'm going to put it in the query unload, which Q. Here we go. So this occurs before the form is unloaded. So just before it unloads, which is exactly what we want. So here's where it should be. Now table revert. Let's see. And all rows. We'll just put table revert. Let's check the help out on this, because I may be missing something. The 0 should be the current row, so table revert. And all rows can be true or false. So if table buffering is enabled, only change made to the current record in the table or cursor are discarded. Okay, so we want false. If table buffering is enabled, which we do have it, only changes made to the current record in the table. If table buffering is enabled, changes made to all records are discarded. Okay, so that's the default. Okay, so it's not 0, it should just be F. Okay, so discard only current record. All right, so one of the things also that we could do is to is to auto enable this once we know that we're adding a new record. So we'll go in it here, and this tells us that we're adding a new record. So I could do this dot txt pass enabled equal true. Okay, now there's a bug in this, and I'm going to leave it because I want to show it to you. There are very subtle things in our code that we need to be aware of. Okay, so let's try that again, and it's just showing me nothing, but these are enabled, so it tells me that there's probably a blank record in the table. Let's browse, and come on, yeah. So interestingly enough, that this is showing, and because the buffer failed, but why didn't it show the full name in the table? Okay, let's zap. Okay, do form, we go new, try that again, G Hudson. And 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to leave the okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go through this. Notice that by default my user level is user. Let me make myself an admin, and I click OK, and it doesn't save. Okay, cancel. That works. Exit. Let's see if any data is in the table. So the data is getting written to the table. My form will not exit. So what we're going to do is to let me just see how long this video is. Oh wow, okay, it's over an hour, but that's okay. Hopefully it will still compile when I try to create the flash file. All right, let's go ahead and debug this. So we want to open. Where's my project? And I'm actually happy all this is happening. So we get to see, in the life of a developer, things never run smoothly. That's not what I wanted to do. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do either. Okay, close. Okay, so in here, what we're going to do is in the sorry, did we wire this up? Okay, so that's the problem. We didn't wire up the click event of the button. Okay, so what I want to say is this form, save, right? And it's interesting that it is saving the record, though I did not commit the table. So my table revert is not kicking in. That's not right. Let's go back here. Okay, so okay, it seems something is still amiss, and we're just taking it one step at a time. And let's run this again. Okay, so first off, I'm not seeing the name of the staff member, so that's one bug that needs to be fixed. Okay, so let's go here. And data, staff, and full name. Okay, so what is happening here? It seems as if the list view. Actually, I don't know why it's not showing the values. But let me do. There is a query or requery method on here that it's good to call queries the row source to which the list or combo box is bound, and ensures that it is showing the most up-to-date data. So let's see, bound to. So this says specify the values of Okay, bound column 1. Okay. Oh, okay. So that wasn't the reason. I didn't specify a row source. So just like the combo box, the list box needs a row source. So I told it what the control source was, but I didn't tell it what the data source was. The data source, of course, is the staff table. So I'll put staff here. And of course, the row source is an alias, because I already have the table open. So use the alias staff in determining the data. So that was a good example of a bug. A programmer's, a developer's bug, not necessarily a bug in the code. Okay, so that's that, and let's run this. So now we have it binding to the ID of the table. So I should not use the alias property, so that's wrong. Let's go back here, because it should be showing the first name. So let's see, I have data, control source is full name, yet it's using okay, so we're going to change this to fields, and then I'll specify full name here. So show the full name column. So we can test this from here, and I'm still getting an error. Okay, so let's qualify this. Staff dot full name, and now behave. Okay, let's get rid of some of these. Okay, and we run, and we still get the same behavior. Okay, this doesn't make any sense to me now. Bear with me, please. Okay, so we said 6 fields to full name. Let's look at the data just to verify what's in there. Okay, so that was right. So 2 is being stored to the full name. Okay, so I wasn't losing my mind after all. Okay, so if I had Garfield in here, and I'm going to figure out how the 2 is getting in there in a moment. So there's little things like these that can have you pulling out what little hairs you may have left on your head, because it didn't make any sense to me as to why it was not being displayed. Okay, so let's try that again. And so here we would have, if a proper name was in there, a proper name displayed. I double click here, it should bring the record up for editing, and so we know that works fine. Don't want to do that yet. I want to click on create a new record. So I want to test this, Jesse. Passwords don't match, which is not true. Passwords do match. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're having some issues with that, so we're going to trace that and see what happens. And I canceled, and that, okay, so something is wrong because the data still gets written to the table. So the buffering, the table buffering is not doing it for me today. So let's, for the sake of time, I'm going to go back to row buffering, and okay, so we'll make this 2. something else we wanted to do here. Staff info. Just double click. In here, we want to compare and see what is happening. So if pass1 is not equal to pass2, I am getting this error message. So I'm going to put a step on here, set step on. This is one way of doing it. I could have double click in here to put a this is called a breakpoint within the code. So let's I like step on, so I'll leave that there. I'll take this off. I'll leave it too. Okay. So what will happen is that as we run the code, we will be debugging. The debugger is open here, so we'll be switching over shortly. Let's okay. So I go to let's edit Jesse James, and okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Click OK, and you can see it stops and well on the breakpoint. I'm going to use F6, or I could use these buttons here to step into, step over, and step out, and we can run to the cursor. So I'm just going to go F6, and as a matter of fact, I'm just going to pull these values up. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it could be a matter of spacing. If you notice the little box I got there, that little help box, I keep forgetting, tooltip box, which is showing me the value, it's a shorter box than this one. So this one has a lot of blanks in it, and because of that, Visual FoxPro sees them as being unequal. So what I'm going to do is to trim. So that's fine. I'll take that and I'll cancel out, and I'm going to delete Jesse. And Jesse's not deleted. So actually he is deleted, but he's not refreshing. We'll come back to that in a second. Let me browse a table and see if Jesse is deleted. So note that the delete marker is on. This here is the delete marker. It's off and it's on, but somehow the form was not updated, and that can be easily fixed. In our refresh method, what we need to do is that when we delete a record, we need to force this guy to do a requery on the table. So let's just fix that before we go on to the other problem. And so we'll say this dot list one dot requery. And list one refresh, just to be on the safe side. We may not need this. May not be necessary. Okay. So that's fine. If okay, so the other form, staff info. So I can take this out, given that we have the breakpoint. So what we want to do is to trim, right trim, rtrim value, rtrim value. There's still an inherent bug in this, which I'm going to show you shortly. Let's try this again, and okay, so Jesse's still showing up, and that's because I did not set up my environment to hide deleted records on this form. Remember that every form, because it has a private data session, I need to set in the load. Wow. In the load of the form, the environment. So set deleted on, set talk off. In fact, I want to do that first. and set exclusive off. And I think that should do it. Okay. We'll run the form again. Close this guy out. And now Jesse is deleted. So let's go new, and I'll create Mike T. and ABC, ABC. Click OK, and of course we still have that on, so let's see. Okay, but we're trimming now, so should be good. We get a table update and a release. I'm just going to press this, and the application continues as normal. And here I had to click on the list before you could see the Michael Taylor. It was only showing Garfield Hudson, so we can quickly fix that. Again, from within these methods, whenever we call the new, delete or refresh, so in edit, let's refresh the form, this form, refresh. We'll copy this into the new as well, and so that should take care of that. Okay, so let's run. Okay, let's try one more. Okay, and so immediately David appears on the list. If I double click on Michael, he shows up. Double click on David, he shows up. Now something is wrong here, because the verify password should also be shown in this list. So if I click OK, I got OK because let me show you why that happened. So let's create a new user, and I call him John D. I put 1, 2, 3, 4, and I leave the verify password blank. You'll see that it accepts, because as far as Visual FoxPro is concerned, it's a little. Let's demonstrate this here. Okay, close this form. In comparison, if I compare ABC equal to ABC, that is true. If I compare ABC to AB, this is also true. Remember this, more is always equal to less. So let's print this and see what it gives us. It gives us a true. So even if I had, and see where I'm going, that is also true. And if I had blank, that is also true. And that happens because I did not set exact on. Exact on. So if I set exact on the first one, let's clear screen again. That is true. This should not be true. It's now false. So that is the reason why the form behaved the way it did. So we can fix that two ways, and the simplest way is to just set exact on, which is what I'm going to do for now, because time is escaping from me. So let's go to Documents and Staff Info, and in the okay, we can take this off. We don't need to debug anymore, and we go to Load, and we'll set exact on. Okay, so one of the things we want to do in the okay, so before I fix that problem, so let's go back and let's look at that. So we have the staff list. Let's open up Michael. So again, we notice that the verified password is not shown in here. If I were to click OK, it's going to give me password don't match, which is not true. I'm editing, I'm not adding, and I didn't change the user's password. So somehow we need to populate this to the same value as this whenever we're in edit mode, so we don't get an issue of passwords don't match. Okay, so let's cancel out, and let's fix that very quickly. Staff, nope, wrong one. Okay, and in the save, actually what we want to do is when we init the form, when we initialize the form, this we know happens when we're adding a new record. So when we're editing, we could just simply so we'll just put a note here in edit mode, and we'll say this dot txt is equal to password as well. And I'll just qualify this by saying staff. And so that should fix that problem. So let's run the staff list again. If I go Michael Taylor, so note now that both the verify and the password are saying the same thing. So if I click OK, if I didn't change the password, that's fine. If I edit Mike T and I make a change to the password, ABCD, and I click OK, then the passwords are mismatched, and so I need to fix that as well. Change them to admin, click OK. So let's try these. I go new, and I'll see if the buffering is working. I cancel, and the buffering is still not working in this table. This is very weird. Okay, let's see how much time I've gone already. Okay, so it's now 90 minutes, and don't know what. Okay, let's see if we can delete this guy. Okay, at least this is working. So do you want to delete this? And we have a bunch of space here, so we need to trim this so the message looks proper. And I do want to delete, and that works very nicely. Let's exit. Let's fix the spacing in this list, in the delete routine, and then let's go over and see what's happening on the buffering side. So we'll all trim here, and that should take care of that. Okay, so we're going to trace this and find out what is going on in the buffering. So set pessimistic row buffering, so that's fine. 3 set optimistic row buffering. So I was row buffering all this time. Okay. I was on 3 and not 5 as I thought. Okay, so let's go back to table buffering, which again, according to the article, is the preferred method, and I do agree. So I change this to 5. I think what is happening here, because the data environment is opening the table for me, and I'm not opening the table, so this may be firing before the table is actually opened. So let's do. Let's just put a little break on this, a breakpoint, set a breakpoint, and let's see what happens when we run this form. Okay, so we'll do the list, and I'll edit Garfield. And so now we're here, and if I put alias in here, I can tell if the table is open or not. So the table is open, so the data environment does fire before the load. Okay, and we can say cursor get prop buffering, and I'll type staff. So right now it's 1, which is telling me that buffering is not turned on for the table. which is fine because I've not set the command yet. So set exact on, and I've turned buffering on. Okay, that is fine. Go to the record. Okay. Want to set a breakpoint somewhere else. So if I change this to 1, 2, 3 and cancel, okay, and edit. Let's run through this again. Okay, so that seems to have worked. Let's exit and remove. Oh, in the wrong form. Staff info. Let's remove the breakpoint. And what I want to do is to set it in here. Query on load. Find out what's happening when we go to okay. So Michael Taylor, and if I mess his name up, I was leaning on the keyboard and I cancel. Let's say edit, and that works fine. I think with the table revert, I had the wrong buffering mode, and I was not aware of it. I was actually using row buffering instead of table buffering, and with the revert, for row buffering, I would need to set the revert to true for the value to be reverted. Let me just show you that quickly. Cancel, exit, and we're almost done. Yippee! Okay, so here with table buffering, this will discard the current record. With row buffering, which is only one record is buffered, if this is false, then it's almost as if I did not call the function at all. I did not call the revert. Revert false, saying don't revert. And so the error was in thinking that in here, initially I had 3, and 3 was actually row buffering, and I thought that it was optimistic table buffering. So my bad. Again, I mean, these are the little things that happen when you're coding. So so far we have these two, and let's wire them up to our menu. Come on. And we have admin, and we can just say do form staff list, and we do menu generate. I know this video is a little long. I do apologize, but in a way I'm kind of happy because you get to see everything. I mean, writing a program, it doesn't happen perfectly, and you have to go back and forth for trying to figure out, what's going on, even when you know or you believe what you're doing is the right thing. So let's run this application and see if that is wired up properly. And we can close U. And so if we go staff, we get our staff list, and I can delete Garfield out of here. And so that's showing properly. Yes. I can edit David's record. I can change his status to admin. Click OK. Double check that. Double click. Okay, so that's fine. And remember that I turned off, I cannot resize this window, and it's also modal. I cannot click on any. The menus are all, well, except for window, are all disabled because this is a modal form. I can cancel that. This one, of course, is not modal, and I can click this. In fact, if I were to go here, I think I would run another instance of the form. And so I will we will show you how to check for this. So to prevent this, what I normally do is to, once I call this option, is to disable it so that I can't call the form more than once. In fact, I could also check within the form code itself, but that's for another day. Okay, so that's it for tonight, and I'll see you soon.